watching World News Program. I'm Miriam Zian, and these are the headlines. On the 17th day of the truce between the US and Iran, an Iranian delegation headed by Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi arrived in Islamabad. The White House says that Witkoff and Kushner will head to Pakistan on Saturday morning, and Islamabad confirms the importance of dialogue and communication to address outstanding issues. A Western divide deepens over the war on Iran. A letter to the Pentagon seeking to punish NATO members. Germany confirms that Spain's NATO membership is not in question, and Britain emphasizes Starmer's denial of yielding to pressure regarding the war on Iran. Trump announces a 3-week extension of the truce between Lebanon and the Zionist entity. Meanwhile, a new Israeli aggression leaves martyrs in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah says that the truce is meaningless while the Israeli aggression continues. Hello and welcome back to the details of your nightly news. First, an Iranian delegation led by Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi arrived in Pakistan Friday night to discuss with Pakistan's leadership regional developments and ongoing peace efforts. Upon arrival, the Iranian foreign minister was received by Pakistani Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Mohammad Ishaq Dar and Chief of Army Staff Field Marshal Sayyid Asim Munir, along with other senior officials. Meanwhile, Iran state television reported that Araghchi will not meet with the U.S. delegation, in which will arrive in Islamabad on Saturday. Earlier in the day, Araghchi said on X that he was embarking on a regional tour that includes stops in Islamabad, Muscat, and Moscow. The Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi held phone calls with Pakistan's Army Chief Asim Munir and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar. He also said he spoke with Kurdistan Region President Neshrivan Barzani without giving further details. Pakistan stressed to Iran the importance of dialogue and communication to resolve outstanding issues. This came during a phone call on Friday between Pakistan's Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar and his Iranian counterpart Abbas Araghchi, according to Pakistan's Foreign Ministry. Iran's Foreign Ministry, cited by Tasneem, a news agency, said the call focused on exchanging views on regional developments and ceasefire-related issues. U.S. President Donald Trump, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and son-in-law Jared Kushner will arrive in Islamabad on Saturday morning for talks with Iran mediated by Pakistan, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said on Friday. Speaking to reporters at the White House, Leavitt said the Trump administration has seen some progress from the Iranian side in the last couple of days without elaborating. As the war in the Middle East enters its 55th day, the Pakistani capital is hosting delegations from Iran and the U.S., hoping to pave the way for another round of negotiations to resolve the ongoing conflict. Samaya has more details.
As the war in the Middle East enters its 55th day, attempts to revive the stalled negotiations to reach a permanent ceasefire are still underway. The Pakistani capital Islamabad, which is acting as mediator in the conflict, is once again receiving delegations from Iran and the United States, but this time without any assurance that direct talks will take place. Despite the fact that both countries denied direct talks, Islamabad had previously expressed optimism over finding a way out of the dark of the war that is heavily burdening the world. U.S. officials Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff are expected to arrive to Islamabad as early as Saturday, according to White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt, who made it clear that the U.S. is expecting negotiations with the Iranian side.
Well, look, as you know, and I spoke about it earlier this week, the president was flexible in granting an extension of the ceasefire throughout this time. The president has decided to dispatch Special Envoy Witkoff and Jared Kushner back to Islamabad. The Iranians want to talk. They want to talk in person. And so the president is, as I've said many, many times to all of you, always willing to give diplomacy a chance. So Steve and Jared will be heading to Pakistan tomorrow to hear the Iranians out. We hope progress will be made, and we hope that positive developments will come from this meeting.
Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi arrived in Islamabad on Friday as a first leg for the tour that will lead him to Muscat and Moscow. The long-awaited negotiations follow U.S. President Donald Trump's extension of the 12-day truce, even as tensions escalate in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has accused Washington of stalling the talks and failing to honor its commitment. Meanwhile, reports indicate that the U.S. Navy has turned back 31 vessels, most of them oil tankers, raising concerns over a de facto blockade on one of the most critical shipping lanes.
From the outset, we said we accepted this ceasefire because it could serve as the groundwork and prelude to a complete end to the war on all fronts, taking into account the country's interests, including compensation, the issue of the Strait of Hormuz, the lifting of sanctions, and all issues that are critical for the country's future.
The Strait of Hormuz remains a key pressure point for the global economy, with disruptions threatening energy supplies and international trade. With global stability at stake, hopes for talks in Islamabad could prove decisive in shaping the next phase of the crisis that can affect on the entire world, as many countries have already voiced the need for an immediate resolution for the conflict.
And US President Donald Trump stressed in a post on Truth Social that he is in no hurry to end the war with Iran, adding that there will be no agreement until it is appropriate and good for the US and its allies. In a statement on Thursday evening, US President Donald Trump ruled out launching nuclear strikes against Iran.
Why do I need it? Why would a stupid question like that be asked? Why would I use a nuclear weapon when we've totally, in a very conventional way, decimated them without it? No, I wouldn't use it. A nuclear weapon should never be allowed to be used by anybody.
European leaders said at their summit in Cyprus on Friday that they want to play a bigger role in de-escalating tensions in the Middle East. Cypriot President stressed that Europe must do more in the region and called for stronger cooperation between the EU and regional countries. The summit also carries symbolic weight as the 2 British bases on the island were targeted by drones at the start of the war. A U.S. official told Reuters that an internal Pentagon email outlined options for Washington to penalize NATO members it believes did not support U.S. operations in the war against Iran. The official, who spoke on condition of anonymity, said the message described access rights, military positioning, and air transit as the bare minimum expected within the alliance. One option mentioned was suspending difficult countries from key or prestigious NATO positions. The email did not propose closing U.S. bases in Europe. The German government spokesperson said on Friday that Spain's NATO membership is not in question. This came as a response to a Reuters report citing an internal U.S. Defense Department email that mentioned suspending Spain's membership as a possible option under consideration. The spokesperson stressed that Spain remains a NATO member and there is no reason to change that. And Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez described the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran as illegal and a big mistake. Speaking Friday on the sidelines of the European Council summit in Cyprus, Sánchez stressed the need for European countries and their allies to share views and information before launching wars, citing the Middle East conflict and its broader impact on Europe's security and stability.
From my point of view, this war is illegal, is a big mistake, and I hope that in the near future we can face a de-escalation and, of course, a way out thanks to diplomacy and not thanks to wars.
And Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez dismissed concerns over Spain's commitment to NATO, saying the country has deployed forces on its eastern flank. He also rejected speculation that the United States could suspend Spain's membership, adding that Spain does not act on emails, as he put it.
Well, our reaction is that Spain is a reliable partner within NATO, and we're fulfilling our obligations with NATO. We are deploying military capabilities and also soldiers at the eastern flank of Europe. So therefore, no worries at all.
The spokesperson for British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said on Friday that sovereignty over the Falkland Islands belongs to the United Kingdom. This came after an internal email from U.S. Department of Defense suggested reviewing Washington's position on the islands as a way to pressure Britain over its stance on the Iran war. The spokesperson added that Starmer has consistently stressed he will not yield to pressure regarding the Iran war, emphasizing that the UK's position on the Falkland Islands is clear and has been firmly communicated to successive US administrations. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said on Friday that any attempts by Iran to plant additional mines in the Strait of Hormuz would constitute a violation of the ceasefire. Earlier, U.S. President Donald Trump said he had ordered the U.S. Navy to target small Iranian boats laying mines in the strait and obstructing navigation, announcing the start of mine clearing operations in the vital maritime corridor.
And part of what the president is threatening is ensuring if there's attempts to recklessly and irresponsibly lay more mines, we're going to deal with that. It's a violation of the ceasefire. So transit is occurring, much more limited than anybody would like to see, and with more risk than people would like to see. But that's because Iran is doing irresponsible things with small fast boats, crafts, like I said, with weapons on them. These are commercial ships, in some cases cruise ships that came through being threatened.
U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth added that American forces are imposing a tight blockade on Iran, which is growing stronger day by day as he...
I know there's a lot of talks. You saw I would call it a silly conference. I know there's a lot of talks. You saw I would call it a silly conference in Europe last week where they got together and talking about maybe doing something eventually when things are done. Those are not serious efforts yet. We would welcome that. We would welcome a serious European effort to do something about this strait and this passage, considering it's their energy capabilities that are most at stake. I think it's a wake-up call. It's a wake-up call for countries around the world. Either you have capabilities or you don't. Otherwise, you're at the behest of a country like Iran, and the only country that can do something about it is the United States military.
China protested and strongly rejected statements by President Trump regarding the cargo of a detained vessel flying the Iranian flag that was seized by the U.S. Navy. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Guo Jiakun described Trump's claim that the vessel was carrying a secret gift to China as unfounded, stressing that normal trade between countries should not be disrupted.
China rejects any assertion and speculation that lack factual evidence. Normal trade between countries should not be disrupted or harmed.
U.S. President Donald Trump announced the extension of the ceasefire between the Israeli side and Hezbollah in Lebanon for 3 weeks, despite intermittent field clashes. During a meeting at the Oval Office with Lebanon's ambassador and the Israeli representative to the United States, Trump said there is a significant opportunity for Lebanon and Israel to reach what he described as a permanent or a peace agreement this year. Two Lebanese citizens were killed by Israeli occupation forces early Friday in a town in the south of Lebanon. According to media reports citing the Lebanese Ministry of Health, an Israeli airstrike targeted the town of Tulin, resulting in 2 fatalities, with a series of intensive air raids and artillery shelling across various areas in the south. Israeli forces issued an evacuation warning for a village in southern Lebanon for the first time since President Donald Trump announced the extension of the ceasefire for 3 weeks. Local media reported on Friday that Israeli authorities issued an urgent warning to residents of Dir Ames, urging them to evacuate their homes immediately and move at least 1 kilometer away from the village. Hezbollah announced on Thursday that it had launched rockets toward northern Israel in response to what it described as Israeli violations of the ceasefire. In a statement, the group said that in defense of Lebanon and its people, and in response to Israeli strikes targeting the town of Yatir, its fighters launched a rocket barrage at the settlement of Shula at 11:15 p.m. on Thursday. In an exclusive interview with Al-24 News نقطة ارتكاز program, United Nations spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric underscored Algeria's growing role on the international stage. He stated that Algeria has a very important role to play, highlighting the country's diplomatic weight in global affairs. Dujarric pointed to Algeria's recent 2-year tenure as an elected member of the United Nations Security Council, noting that Algeria took the lead on a number of key issues, addressing both regional challenges and broader global concerns.
And it would benefit. Well, I think Algeria has a very important voice to play. As you know, Algeria just finished 2 years as an elected member of the Security Council. I think a very vocal elected member taking the lead on a number of issues, both regional and global.
In the same context, UN spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric also called for stronger African representation in the Security Council, stressing that the time has come for Africa to enjoy a permanent seat in the UN body. Let's take a listen.
It is high time that Africa have a seat on the Security Council, a permanent seat. And I can tell you that Mr. Guterres has been extremely vocal on that, both publicly and privately. At the end of the day, the changes that are needed in the Security Council will have to come from the membership of the United Nations itself. The Secretary General cannot push or will this type of reform through, but I can tell you he is encouraging it, as I mentioned, both publicly and behind the scenes.
The UN Secretary General spokesperson voiced deep concern over escalating tensions in the Strait of Hormuz, warning of a potential direct Iran-US conflict. Here is Stéphane Dujarric.
I have to tell you, we are extremely worried about the situation in the Strait of Hormuz. It is a very volatile situation which could descend into direct armed conflict between Iran and the United States. On top of that, we are seeing the blockage of the Strait of Hormuz having a tremendous impact throughout the region and beyond. We're seeing energy prices go up. We're seeing supply routes being choked off. We're seeing basic supplies, including such a basic supply as fertilizer, being choked off. This conflict may be regional, but it is global. It's in its impact.
In other news, Chadian President Mohamed Idriss Déby Itno has concluded his 3-day official visit to Algeria. He was seen off at Algiers International Airport by the President of the Algerian Council of the Nation, Azzouz Nasri. Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune and Chadian President Mohamed Idriss Déby Itno expressed satisfaction with bilateral ties, reaffirming their commitment to strengthen relations rooted in brotherhood, solidarity, and shared African priorities. In a joint statement, they highlighted progress since Déby's September 2025 visit to Algeria and agreed to reinforce institutional frameworks and coordination mechanisms to sustain cooperation.
Regarding the general situation and the state of bilateral relations, the two presidents expressed their full satisfaction with the quality of Algerian-Chadian relations and reaffirmed their shared determination to give them new impetus that raises the level of bonds of brotherhood, solidarity, and mutual respect that have united the two countries since their independence and the establishment of bilateral diplomatic relations in 1975. The two heads of state hailed the positive momentum recorded since the visit of the President of Chad to Algeria in September 2025 and agreed to support this momentum through strengthening the institutional framework, follow-up mechanisms, and the evaluation of joint activities.
President Tebboune and his Chadian counterpart also reaffirmed their commitment to promoting peace, stability, and sustainable development. According to the joint statement, the two leaders exchanged views on security issues of mutual interest and reaffirmed their determination to strengthen cooperation in combating terrorism and violent extremism, stressing the importance of enhancing coordination between the relevant institutions in both countries.
With regard to security cooperation and stability, the two presidents exchanged views on security issues of common interest, with particular focus on challenges facing their respective regional environments. The president reaffirmed their commitment to promoting peace, stability, and sustainable development, as well as their determination to strengthen cooperation in combating terrorism, violent extremism, and various forms of cross-border crime. They also reaffirmed their attachment to principles of state sovereignty, territorial integrity, and non-interference in internal affairs.
The Algerian head of state and his Chadian counterpart emphasized the need to translate commitments into concrete high-impact projects, while also commending the progress achieved in economic cooperation. Let's have a listen.
Regarding economic, energy, and industrial partnership, the two presidents welcomed the progress achieved in economic cooperation and stressed the need to translate pledged commitments into tangible, high-impact projects. Both sides praised the activation of the Algerian-Chadian Business Council, aimed at boosting trade exchanges, facilitating investment, and encouraging direct contact between economic stakeholders. They further welcomed the initiative to organize an economic forum as a tool to enhance trade and diversify the economy.
Both leaders renewed their support for political processes in Africa within the frameworks of the African Union and the United Nations, in accordance with international charters that ensure state sovereignty, particularly in relation to the situations in Libya, the Sahel region, and Sudan.
On issues of common interest, the two presidents exchanged views on a number of regional and international issues, with emphasis on approaches based on dialogue and respect for international law. They reaffirmed their commitment to the principles of the United Nations Charter, particularly state sovereignty and the peaceful settlement of disputes, as well as their support for political processes in Africa within the frameworks of the African Union and the United Nations. Regarding Libya, the Sahel region, and Sudan, they renewed their support for political solutions based on respect for state sovereignty, regional cooperation, and approaches adapted to the specific context concerned.
And finally, Algeria and Chad also reaffirmed their commitment to United Nations resolutions aimed at delivering justice for the Palestinian people in their just cause and to resolving the conflict in Western Sahara in line with UN resolutions. The joint statement added that both presidents addressed the Sahrawi issue, stressing the need to reach a political solution acceptable to both parties and to ensure a resolution that guarantees the Sahrawi people their rights.
The two presidents also addressed the issue of Western Sahara, reaffirming their commitment to reaching a political solution acceptable to both parties in accordance with the United Nations resolutions. Regarding the Palestinian cause, they renewed their support for a solution based on the rights of the Palestinian people to self-determination and expressed their concern over the current development affecting the overall situation in the Middle East.
That's a wrap for tonight's newscast. Thank you for watching, and coming up next, stay with us for our nightly special on the Iran-US conflict.